Welcome to the Book of Days Project. Today is February the 25th. Let's take a look, see what is noted on this day in Robert Chambers' The Book of Days. February 25th, born Germain de Saint-Foy, 1703 in Rennes. Died William Lilly, master of St. Paul's School in London. Robert, Earl of Essex, beheaded in 1600. Count Wallenstein, commander, assassinated 1634. Frederick I of Prussia, dead in 1713. Sir Christopher Wren, architect, dead 1723 in St. James. It's a feast day of Saint Victorinus and his 6 companion martyrs in 284. It is also the feast day of St. Walbarge, Virgin of England, 779. Today we will speak of Count Wallenstein. There is scarcely a personage in history of more awe-striking character than Count Wallenstein, commander of the Emperor's armies in that struggle with Protestantism, the 30 Years' War. Born of high rank in 1583, Wallenstein found himself at 40 chief of the imperial armies and the possessor of immense wealth. Concentrating a powerful mind on one object, the gratification of his ambition, he attained it to a remarkable degree, and was for some time beyond doubt the greatest subject in Europe. In managing troops by a merciless discipline, in making rapid marches, in the fiery energy of his attacks upon the enemy, he was unrivaled. In but one battle, that of Lutzen, where he met the Protestant army under Gustavus of Sweden, was he unsuccessful. The personality and habits of the man have been strikingly described by Michel in his History of the Austrian Government. Quote, Wallenstein's immense riches, his profound reserve, and theatrical manners were the principal means he employed to exalt the imagination of the masses. He always appeared in public surrounded by extraordinary pomp, and allowed all those attached to his house to share in his luxury. His officers lived sumptuously at his table, where never less than 100 dishes were served, and as he rewarded with excessive liberality, not only the multitude, but the greatest personages were dazzled by this Asiatic splendor. 6 gates gave entrance to his palace at Prague, to make room for which he had pulled down 100 houses. Similar chateaux were erected by his orders on all his numerous estates. 24 chamberlains, sprung from the most noble families, disputed the honor of serving him, and some sent back the golden key, emblem of their grade, to the emperor, in order that they might wait on Wallenstein. Incredible luxury and splendor. He educated 60 pages, dressed in blue velvet and gold, to whom he gave the first masters. 50 truants guarded his antechamber night and day. 6 barons and the same number of chevaliers were constantly within call to bear his orders. His maître d'hôtel was a person of distinction. 1,000 persons usually formed his household, and about 1,000 horses filled his stables. Sounds like tall tale, doesn't it? Where they fed from marble mangers. My gosh, nothing was overlooked here. When he set out on his travels, 100 carriages drawn by 4 or 6 horses convoyed his servants and baggage. 60 carriages and 50 led horses carried the people of his suite. 10 trumpeters with silver bugles preceded the procession, and the richness of his liveries, the pomp of his equipage, and the decoration of his deportment were in harmony with all the rest. In the hall of his palace at Prague, he had himself painted in a triumphal car, with a wreath of laurels around his head and a star above him. Wallenstein's appearance was enough in itself to inspire fear and respect. His tall, thin figure, his haughty attitude, the stern expression of his pale face, his wide forehead that seemed formed to command, his black hair, close shorn and harsh, his little dark eyes in which the flame of authority shone, his haughty and suspicious look, his thick moustache and tufted beard, produced at the first glance a startling sensation. His usual dress consisted of a justaucorps of elkskin, covered by a white doublet and cloak. Round his neck he wore a Spanish ruff. In his hat fluttered a large red plume, while scarlet pantaloons and boots of Cordoba leather, carefully padded on account of the gout, completed his ordinary attire. While his army devoted itself to pleasure, the deepest silence reigned around the general. He could not endure the rumbling of cars, loud conversations, or even simple sounds. One of his chamberlains was hanged for waking him without orders. What a sweetheart. And an officer secretly put to death because his spurs had clanged when he came to the general. His servants glided about the rooms like phantoms, and a dozen patrols incessantly moved around his tent or palace to maintain perpetual tranquility. Chains were also stretched across the streets in order to guard him against any sound. Wallenstein was ever absorbed in himself, ever engaged with his plans and designs. He was never seen to smile, and his pride rendered him inaccessible to sensual pleasures. What came first there? The rendering of him inaccessible to sensual pleasures, or his inability to experience sensual pleasures? Fascinating, and another massive tale stemming from our wonderful Book of Days. It is the death today marked of the Sir Christopher Wren. Wren's long and useful life, although protracted by activity and temperance much beyond the usual terms of man's existence, was brought to a close by an accident. After his dismissal from the office of Surveyor General, he occupied a town residence in St. James Street, Piccadilly, and continued to superintend the repairs of Westminster Abbey. He also rented from the Crown a house at Hampton Court, where he often retired and spent the greater part of his last 5 years of his life in study and in contemplation. The good old man had in his later days accustomed himself to sleep a short time after his dinner. On the 25th of February, this day, 1723, his servant, thinking his master had slept longer than usual, went into his room and found him dead in his chair. He was in his 91st year. The funeral of Wren was attended by an assemblage of honorable and distinguished personages from his house in St. James Street to St. Paul's Cathedral, where his remains were deposited in the crypt, joining to others of his family in the recess of the southeastern window, under the choir. His grave is covered with a black marble slab with a short inscription in English, and on the western jamb of the window recess is a handsome tablet with a Latin transcription written by the architect's son, Christopher, in which are the words, Lector si monumentum quadis circumspice, which instructs to look around, has led to the conclusion that the table was intended for the body of the cathedral, where the public might read it. Wren adorned London with no fewer than 40 public buildings, but was the worst paid architect of whom we have any record. His annual salary as architect of St. Paul's Cathedral was £200 sterling, and his pay for rebuilding the churches in the city was only £100 a year. Again, another great artist gone unappreciated. The invasion panic. Towards the close of February 1744, the threatened invasion of England by the French, accompanied by the Young Pretender, caused a general alarm throughout the kingdom, and all Roman Catholics were prohibited from appearing within 10 miles of London. We had then 3 ships in the Downs, but the landing was expected to be in Essex or Suffolk. Walpole writes from the House of Commons February 16th, "We have come near to a crisis, and I expect it. After the various reports about the Brest squadron, it is proved that they are all 16 ships of the line off Torbay, in all probability to draw our fleet from Dunkirk, where they have 2 men of war, and 16 large Indiamen to transport 8,000 foot and 2,000 horse, which are there in the town. There has been some difficulty to persuade the people of this eminence of our danger, but yesterday the king sent a message to both houses to acquaint us that he has certain information of the Young Pretender being in France, and of the divined invasion from thence in concert with the disaffected here." On the 25th of February, the English Channel fleet under Sir John Norris came within a league of the Brest squadron of France. Walpole says the coasts were covered with people to see the engagement, but at 7 in the evening the wind changed and the French fleet escaped. A violent storm shattered and wrecked the transports, and the expedition was glad to put back to Dunkirk. The dread of the invasion was then at an end. The invasion, designed in 1744, did not take place, but in the next year the Young Pretender, as is well known, came with only 7 men and nearly overturned the government. Time, Day, and Night by Geoffrey Whitney. 2 horses free, a third doth swiftly chase, the one is white, the other black of hue. None bridles have for to restrain their pace, and thus they both the other still pursue, and never cease continual course to make, until at length the first they overtake. The foremost horse that runs so fast away, it is our time, while here our race we rim, the black and white presenteth night and day, who after haste until the goal be won. And leave us not, but follow from our birth, until we yield and turn again to earth. Thank you for joining us in the Book of Days. We will see you demain.